with humility and with grace. Amen. So we are on our third week in the series of Nehemiah. I'm not giving you a test this morning, but so far we've heard that Nehemiah was a devout captive Jew. He had risen to the important role of cupbearer in the Persian Empire. He asked King Artaxerxes for permission to return to Jerusalem to rebuild its walls and its community. With the king's blessing and backing, Nehemiah returned to Jerusalem. Before embarking on the task he was set to do by God, he rested for 3 days. He very wisely resisted the temptation to launch straight into action, and he took time to prepare, to soak up the culture, check out the vibe, if you like, and secretly review the state of the city walls. As Gaz put it last week, he scoped the scale of the problem. So to his surprise, he found that things were actually far worse than he thought. See, as well as the walls being in need of attention, he discovered that most of the Jews were quite satisfied to have their cultural identity diluted with influences now that were coming in from Samaria and from Palestine. Sanballat and Tobiah, who we will be hearing more about next week, were more or less running the place, and they were Sumerians, they weren't even Jews. Society was slipping, accepting the benefits of perhaps good trading relationships with the countries around them, but at the cost of their own distinctive identity. And they'd let their religious beliefs merge with the worship of other gods. So he was wise just to take stock and scope the scale of the problem. This analysis acted a bit like a starting pistol for Nehemiah. He understood the scale of the task that God had put before him. It was to both rebuild the walls, but also to restore the identity of Jerusalem. So he knew the task was enormous. He knew it would take time to complete it. And he also knew he was going to need a very dedicated team of people if he was going to carry out God's wishes. So this brings us nicely on to our theme for today, which is teamwork. In school, I have an acrostic poster put up in my classroom, which says team. You can see it on the screen there. Together, everyone achieves more. It helps my class to pull together, and most days they need help to pull together. It helps to build trust and confidence. It builds relationships, but also it helps them to take responsibility for their role within the class, thus resulting in everybody together achieving more. Nehemiah went to the officials, the leaders and the priests and nobles, and he asked them to join him in responding to God's instructions. He also recruited from the surrounding areas labourers and builders, but also people who are willing just to stand guard and to watch over, protect the vulnerable places in the wall while the work was going on. Nehemiah sort of realised that Sanballat and Tobias probably wouldn't be very happy with what was going on once they'd cottoned on. So he wanted the job done quickly, but he also wanted it done well. Each gate, we read, was repaired. We've heard from Bill, the sheep gate, the valley gate, the dung gate, the east gate, but to name a few. The old wooden gates had been burnt down by Nebuchadnezzar, and these would all need replacing with new gates with doors and bolts and bars to strengthen and to secure them. So with his team assembled, Nehemiah released them into their roles. And the remarkable thing is that the whole job was finished within 52 days. That is incredible. Just think how long it would have taken him if he'd tried to do it on his own. He would have achieved very little, but as a team, together, everyone achieved more. So in chapter 3, if you read the entirety, there are some 38 different names. So Bill, we didn't give you all those today. We took pity on you. 42 different teams of people working on 7 sections of the wall. And at the beginning of this talk, I drew attention to the reading of the list of names because the very record of them just teaches us how important teamwork is if we want to achieve God's purposes. When we respond to God's directive as a church, we're not meant to work in isolation. That's not the plan. Working alone does achieve, but it achieves very little. So just imagine if we were trying to run an event like a festival weekend and we had one helper. And they couldn't possibly see to all the jobs, could they? And probably after about an hour, you'd find them collapsed somewhere between the car park and the kitchen. Following God's directives requires teams of people, all willing to volunteer, to help out or to plan or to get all the jobs done in the background. If everyone contributes and plays their part, the workload is shared and the initiatives can be achieved successfully. And by working together, it builds fellowship among us, it builds trust, and it unites us as a church behind a goal or a purpose. And when this happens, anything, my friends, is possible with God. So returning to the passage, the new wall repairs gave the people of Jerusalem a tremendous boost. Their morale was lifted, they felt better. It was restoring their identity and securing their future. If I could have the other slide, David. Oh, is it big enough? Oh, yes, so yours is bigger than mine, okay. So you can't see it very clearly, but on the one side you can see there's a slightly darker line going around. So you've got the whole of the city, but the darker line is where the wall repairs were taking place. And just up the top right side, it's got the sheep gate. The temple you can see sort of in the centre there. Sorry, it's a bit small. So we're going to just focus for a moment on some of these gates and how the team came together and the significance of all of this, what we can learn from it. So why were these gates so important? Well, each gate was named for a deliberate function or a spiritual purpose. And I looked into a lot of this and I've had to really trim it down. So it's fascinating if you want to go look this up for yourself. So the sheep gate was symbolic of salvation and sacrifice because it's the gate through which the sacrificial animals for the temple were brought. Verse 3 now makes more sense when we read, Eliashib, the high priest, and his fellow priests went to work to rebuild the sheep gate. They dedicated it and set its doors in place, building as far as the Tower of the 100, which they dedicated, and as far as the Tower of Hananel. So Eliashib volunteered to take charge of building the section of the wall and repairing the sheep gate because it was close to the temple. He would make sure the job was well done because he was passionate about it. It was in his interest to protect the Temple Mount. It was where he lived, and as Gaz mentioned last week, it was where he lived and worked. So he was the right person for that section of wall. There was also the East Gate, symbolic of future hope and redemption. There was a gate called the Valley Gate, which valley is a low point in the land, isn't it? And it helped people to reflect on perhaps the low points in their lives and acknowledge their reliance on God. The valley gate was repaired by Hannan and the residents of Zanoah. They rebuilt it and put its doors with their bolts and bars in place. They also repaired 1,000 cubits of wall as far as the Dung Gate. The Dung Gate was repaired by Malchijah, the son of Rechab, the ruler of the district of Beth Hakerem. He rebuilt it. He put its doors with their bolts and their bars in place. The Dung Gate. I know you were waiting. Yeah, good one, Peter. The Dung Gate got its name because it was the place where all of the city's waste was disposed of. It was, shall we say, a fairly unpleasant place to be working. Hannan and his friends had repaired a rather substantial section of wall, and when they reached the Dung Gate, they decided they were going to stop there. And can you blame them, really? But the thing is, someone had to step up to do the worst job in the entire project. And we have Malchijah. He was quite an important man. He was the son of one of the district rulers. And he volunteered. He humbled himself, and he took on the most menial job of the whole thing. Now, this example speaks volumes about service and humility, doesn't it? It was the job that everybody else had thought was beneath them. And it reminds me a little bit of the Last Supper. No one was prepared to wash the disciples' feet. They all thought it was beneath them. It was the role of a servant. And it was Jesus, the honoured guest, who humbled himself and took on that menial role as a servant and washed his followers' feet. And it made me ask myself, are there some roles in church or in my workplace that I consider are beneath me? Am I really willing to serve God in whatever way he asks me to? So each team working on the wall had different responsibilities. Some planned, some supervised, some built, some guarded. But behind all this, there was another very busy team of people making sure everything ran smoothly. How about the people who provided meals for the workers? How about the people who repaired the broken tools? Do you think the work might have stopped Gaz if the cake had run out? He's nodding, yeah. But not in Lent. Yeah. Not in Lent. The work would have still gone on, wouldn't it? It's particularly in the music team, yes. So the point is that no one should ever feel they are not of use to God. Just like the workers on the walls, in our church family, never feel that God is done with you. Yeah? I've got some yeses out there. Never feel you can't be of service to him. Never feel that your voice is irrelevant and you've got nothing left to offer. We are only able to achieve things for God through his grace and through our teamwork. In coming together and rallying under his banner, we can work towards seeing God honoured and his purposes fulfilled here. 1 Peter 2 verse 5 says, "You also, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood, offering spiritual sacrifices to God through Jesus Christ." To create a successful team, you need a variety of people with different skills and different knowledge, with wisdom and with enthusiasm. You need a healthy balance of fresh blood and foundational and seasoned experience. I'm quite a big follower of the Lionesses, the England ladies football team, and I looked at what makes them successful. They've got their foundational players like Lucy Bronze and Millie Bright, Mary Earps, the experienced players. But they've also got a lot of new, young, enthusiastic talent new players coming in. And the older, more experienced players who've been there before can help to shape and mould and to encourage the new players. But the interesting thing is, they all need each other to be a winning combination. So if you don't remember anything else from today's talk, I hope you'll be really encouraged to roll your sleeves up and help out. If you've never volunteered to help out at a church-run event because you thought what you had to offer probably wasn't worth it, maybe volunteer anyway, because you might be pleasantly surprised. We're not after celebrities. We're simply after humble hearts. I remember some years ago there was a bit of a fuss and a grumble because the toilet roll had run out in the barn. And there was a lot of moaning about it. And one of the church wardens just sort of overheard it and quietly got up, went to the cupboard, unlocked the cupboard, got the toilet rolls out. The toilet rolls were replaced. No fuss whatsoever. They took on, that was quite a highly visual person, took on a menial role, just like Malchijah we heard earlier on. That impressed me so much, and that's changed my thinking about the jobs and things that we do in church. So, if you are a cook. If you're a strategist, plan. If you're an intercessor, offer prayer support. Every role is equally important, and the team is only effective if we work together. Yes? Good, you're still with me. So, pulling this all together, Nehemiah, he reviewed the situation, he recruited his team, and then he released them into their roles. So just a couple of things to reflect on this week. Team means together everyone achieves more. So what is your attitude towards the roles we have at church? Do you perhaps fall victim to thinking some jobs are beneath you? Or do you simply think you don't have anything to offer? Are you someone who rallies under the banner of Christ, seeing what needs doing and offering your skills? Finally, we all need encouragement. So let's notice one another's giftings and encourage each other to use them as we build our future here by supporting the vision and the ministry and the mission of this church, and indeed the wider church. Amen.